But they said, obviously, if you dip it in, leave it for 5 minutes, it'll grow to like 10 inches long. Unbelievable, isn't it? So I'm going to try it. I'm going to dip it into it. Hello, folks. Hey, Kilt-Man here. Kilt-Man at your service. Armed with whiskey. Joined by a guest. Not a very vocal guest, but a guest nonetheless. He answers the name of Frankie. Or Monster. However you want to call him. Anyway, folks. Now, it's Shoktober, and I've been doing, I've begun, this series of film reviews, horror film reviews. And of course, it was inevitable that someone was going to ask me, "Oh, Kilt-Man, what's your top 10 favourite horror movies?" I knew someone was going to do this. So I kind of prepared an answer. No, I didn't. I'll be honest with you. Ever since my days of reviewing movies way back for AV forums, we always did like a top 10, especially at Halloween, top 10 horror movies. I despise top 10 lists. I love reading them. I love reading people's top 10s. But when you get asked yourself, I just go, oh shit, I don't know. It's so hard to do. And it changes all the time. I mean, my top favourite films of all time remain the same. And they're always, I've covered them many times before. You guys don't need to hear that list again. But, so I thought, well, okay, horror movies, yeah. I can pick, what I'll do is, periodically throughout this season, I'm going to do like a decade from the 30s onwards to the present. And I'll pick 10 films from that decade, which I love. Now, they will not necessarily be a top 10, as in like, number 1 is blah, 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 and number 10 is the worst out of the list. No, I can't act like that. I genuinely can't act like that. Just because different films have different meanings at different times, the themes might mean more to you at some point than other points. You might see something different in a film that you haven't seen before, and it elevates it in, well, you know what I mean. So I can't possibly just pick 10 films and put them in a strategic, diplomatic order. No. But I will pick 10 films from each decade, though. Like I say, it's a bit of fun, And I'm going to go back to the vintage era. Now, before somebody go like, well, Kilt-Man, what about the 20s? The roaring 20s? Well, yeah. I don't think I could pick 10 films from the 20s that I actually love. Phantom of the Opera, yeah. Dr. Mabuse. Christ, what else would there be in the 20s? Der Golem, maybe. Oh, Nosferatu. Well, there's 4, or whatever. And I struggle to think of them. So anyway, I'm going to start with the 30s. But, hey, we need some kind of musical accompaniment. So let's go for the Universal Movies Fanfare. And you know what? I haven't even started that yet. And if you're wondering why my eyes are not looking directly at the lens, because I'm sitting in a different location, I can't judge. I know the lens is right there, so I should be staring at that. But they're hard to do. You look at yourself in these cameras. So if I be alarmingly distracted and looking elsewhere, like in those adverts, those bogus commercials where the person's going, yes, I use Pro B because I'm a dentist and that's the best toothpaste known to man. And then it cuts that way. And you're thinking, who the fuck are you talking to? Talk to me. You're trying to sell it to me. So anyway, right. Now, I did compile an ickle list. So, anyway, right. For the 1930s. From 1931. Now, you're going to realise, as I go through this, that these are fucking obvious choices, really. But there might be a couple there which you think, oh, yeah, I haven't really thought about that one. Todd Browning's 1931 Dracula with Bela Lugosi. Obviously. It's got to be there, hasn't it? It's a seminal classic. A masterpiece of mood and, Bela Lugosi's performance. I don't care what anyone says about Bela Lugosi. He could deliver a fantastic performance. In most of the films he was in, he then got sadly stereotyped and typecast, and he had to play a vampire or Dracula for the rest of his fucking life, And a tragedy that turned out to be, because the guy had versatility. Anyway, there was 2 versions of Dracula filmed. Obviously Todd Browning's English-speaking version, which was the American release version, and concurrently filmed with that was a Mexican version, Spanish-speaking one, because they like to do this. Universal did this. They do one for the domestic market, one for the foreign market. Now, in every single aspect, bar one, the Spanish version is absolutely superior. It's a longer film, there's more action to it, the dialogue's richer, there's more dialogue, the acting by and large is much better, the sets are better, even though they filmed pretty much on the same sets, but the camera angles were different and the set dressing was different, and it just looked like a much more better polished movie. But letting it down was the star himself, Dracula. They had a guy called Carlos Villas playing him, and although he does give a magnetic performance, he's got a big grin on his face half the time. When Bela Lugosi smiled, it was sinister, and there was no teeth on show. Because let's face it, he didn't have fangs in that movie either. But Bela Lugosi's line delivery, his broken English, his heavy Hungarian accent, only created, one of the most indelible, Count Draculas of all time. Oft imitated and never forgotten. But Dracula, the Browning version, is very stately, very theatrical, very parlour room sort of stuff. But you've got Dwight Fry in there as Renfield, and he's brilliant, off his head, manic, the master's coming and all this. It's very moody, and there is a couple of great set pieces in it. Obviously, Castle Dracula, Jonathan Harker arriving there, it is magnificent again. But again, the Spanish version, try to dig out the Spanish version, and you'll be richly rewarded. It's a really good version of the story. So, now obviously, if you're going to have Dracula, you're going to have 1931's Frankenstein by James Whale. The original Frankenstein. There he is. Well, there's the monster he created. I'm not making that mistake. He's not called Frankenstein at all. The patchwork quilt of the monster that Colin Clive as, Dr. Frankenstein creates via lightning in a laboratory. The bodies of, rightly removed cadavers, from the grave. And now I know what it feels like to play God, and all this. And the great sets by Kenneth Strickfaden using oscillators and resonators and all this electrical paraphernalia of the era. Great big whirring generators and stuff. And they really worked, You watch that now and the elaborate sets, a bit of German expressionism creeping in there, sort of the windmill and the castle keep where the laboratory is. It's just the bleak landscapes. Just awesome film. Carlos' performance, Jack P. Pierce's makeup for him. They're not bolts, they're electrodes, folks. Electrodes to get the power into him. And if you look at the makeup on him, even though this is 1931, there's a lot of detail. The stitched together hands, the stitching around the neck, the cuts on the head, lots and lots of little gruesome details in there. And it was a shocker. It was a shocker at the time. The poor little girl making daisy chains by the lakeside. He chucks her in to see if she floats as well. Oops a daisy. But he's the poor misunderstood monster. The film is an unparalleled classic, beaten only by one thing in the vintage Frankenstein genre, and that would be Bride of Frankenstein, which came in 1935, also directed by James Whale. At this point, James Whale stepped down to the Frankenstein franchise. Now, this was a new concept. This was basically a horror comedy. It's very funny. The monster learns to talk, learns to smoke, learns to have a drink, friend, good. Cigar, good, but it all goes sadly tits up. He wants a bride. And of course you've got Ernest Thesiger. Ernest Thesiger as Dr. Pretorius. And Dr. Pretorius is envious of Colin Clive, once again reprising his role as Dr. Frankenstein. But he's all shaken up by his first experiments and how badly awry they went. And he doesn't want to do any more. But Dr. Pretorius arrives, during a lightning storm, as you would, to demand his presence in a further experiment. I am envious, because you created size. All I could create was life. And he's got miniature people in glass jars, in bell jars. He's got a king, he's got a jester, he's got a ballerina, and he's got a mermaid thing. Yes, it was a strange concoction there, a bit of pond life, mixed together, and it came up with this mermaid. But they're alive, and they're perfect, just in miniature. Great special effect as well. Because size, you conquered size. I can never do that. Colin Clive's fucking, experiment, his creation is a right bloody mess. Why would you want something to look like that? But of course the monster comes back and he wants a bride. So Elsa Lanchester plays the bride. And the bells ring, when the Frankenstein, the monster has his bride, It's awesome stuff. But it's also terribly tragic again. And once again, everything comes crashing down. They are the two masterpieces of the Frankenstein genre, if it's the vintage genre. What's next on my list? Again, this is in no particular order. 1935, Werewolf of London by Stuart Walker. Now, this was the first, well, it wasn't the first Universal attempt at a werewolf movie. They did one called The Werewolf back in the silent days. Now, that wasn't, strictly speaking, a proper werewolf movie. It was a Native American woman who was cursed and persecuted, and she took the form of a wolf. You can't get the print now. I've seen images from it, but you can't get the movie, as far as I know. So the first actual proper foray into ferocious, lupine, lycanthropic monsters was Henry Hull playing the Werewolf of London. Not an American Werewolf of London. He's a very stiff upper lipped, very staunchly wooden-acted Englishman called Henry Hull. And it's about a flower, botanical, he's a botanist, and they find this flower which only blooms during a full moon. But anyway, there's a rival doctor, whose name I've forgotten, Doctor, and he's a werewolf, and the two of them end up having to battle it out. But the effects, again, by Jack P. Pierce, predating the Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. Again, it's lap dissolve, but they do it really well where he walks between pillars and he's slightly hairy between that pillar and that pillar. Then he walks through the next set of pillars, he's even hairier again. And at the end, and he wears like a flat cap and a big frock coat, he turns the collars up. But he's got fangs and he looks good, because I've always said I prefer the human look. You got Right Werewolf that's got the vestige of humanity, and he's got it, and he does look sinister. There's a lot of comedy to it as well, and you've got twittery older women, which is like, they do this on theatrical productions. They have the twittering old dame. You had that in the first two Frankenstein films as well. And but Werewolf of London, thumbs up, love it. James Whale returns with the old dark house. This was in 1932. This is great. You've got Boris Karloff again playing the mute manservant with a badly scarred face. He's a hulking brute in it again. The thing is, Boris Karloff, or Ernest, what's his name, Henry Pratt, a Lancashire-born man, was a lovely, lovely, soft-spoken gentleman, and yet he played bloody monsters and brutes and all sorts of renegade creatures. But he plays the brutish manservant of this really bizarre household in the middle of fucking nowhere. And Charles Lawton and the gorgeous Gloria Stewart and two other people whose names I've forgotten arrive there during a storm. And it's basically set in this house of the weirdest family ever. Ernest Hessinger is back in there again. Have a potato, he says. But of course there's different floors to this house, and there's different members of the family, some of whom you shouldn't see because they're locked away. And this thing's going to go horrendously tits up for these guests and visitors. And you'll have lots of argy-bargy. It's a short movie, but it packs a wallop. It's very funny, typical James Whale. There's a wicked sense of humour to it. A wicked sense of aristocracy and class derision, and buffoonery. And it's just brilliant. The first time you see Boris Karloff is when the door opens, they're in a storm, banging on the door of this one house in the middle of nowhere. Big mountainside, and the door opens just a crack, and you see just Boris Karloff's eye, and then it opens again, and they're going like, "Hello, can we come in? Are you the master of the house?" And Boris Karloff with a big scar just goes, because he can't speak. But he gets the hots for Gloria Stewart though, and you've even got an older lady in it who clearly has a lesbian tendency as well, and tries to undress Gloria Stewart and touch her skin. Crazy, but great imagery as well. What else have we got? So we've got 1932, Karl Freund, The Mummy, the original Mummy. Again, it's this guy. It's old Boris Karloff You only see him as a mummy for literally the first, 5 minutes of the movie. And you only see like an eye open and a hand begin to move. And then you see the hand take the scrolls of the dead, or the scrolls of life. This can be quite important, this. Are they of life or of death? He reaches down, takes them, and you just see a bit of bandage go out the door. And the poor guy who saw it, he's like, he went for a walk. He's gone completely fucking loopy. And then Boris Karloff returns as the wizened old Egyptian sort of, scientist who runs the museum. But really, it's the mummy just reincarnated and wanting his bride, the reincarnation of his bride, played by the gorgeous Zita Johann, who again, she wears some very flimsy gear. A lot of these films were like pre-Hays Code, when horror films weren't a known thing at the time. They were just weird, spectacular movies, dark romances. Horror as a genre wasn't a thing, but they got away with murder. There was literally, there was people getting killed, there was brains in jars, and you got women with see-through stuff on and sexual references. After this, things would change a hell of a lot, like for many, many years, decades in fact. But The Mummy is a slow, sedate, and yet gloriously atmospheric piece of pure cinema. The camera work is great, the imagery is superlative. It's got so much atmosphere to it. And, contrary to what a lot of people think, same as with Dracula, they think, it's just takes place in one room and nothing happens in it. No, you have got action, murders, things do happen. A lot of intrigue is there, a lot of mystery, a lot of suspense, and a ritual. Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. Moving along. People might go like, you shouldn't have this one in here, but really speaking, it is a horror movie. There's oodles of horror in it. 1933, King Kong, Ernest B. Schoedsack and Marion C. Cooper. An absolute cinematic milestone for effects, for bizarre storytelling, for action, for suspense, for horror. It's a fucking great big gorilla that kills people. He chomps on natives, he squashes them flat, he breaks them apart, he pulls women out of 50-story windows and hurls them to their death, he destroys trains and stuff. Fuck's sake, it's a great big bloody gorilla. He's a monster. You've got people getting picked off by other dinosaurs. There's a lot of carnage in this movie, and it's genuinely terrifying. His first arrival, when he picks up Anne Darrow and runs off into the fucking jungle with her, and then his attack on the wall, his rampage through the native village, his rampage through New York. Come on now, it's a great big monster movie. And correct me if I'm wrong, but monster movies belong under the great big banner of horror. So, King Kong, very definitely in there. One of the greatest films ever made, definitely. Oh, here's another controversial one. 1932, by L.C. Kenton, The Island of Lost Souls. Now this is a reworking of H.G. Wells's The Island of Dr. Moreau. Now Dr. Moreau is played by Charles Lawton. Slick back hair, looking a lot like comic Peter Kay in this. He does, he looks a lot like Peter Kay, with a little muzzy on, with his hair slicked back. He's conducting horrific experiments to combine humans and animals on his little Pacific atoll. And you've got the panther woman, Lola, I think her name is, and an exotic woman. And again, this is a bit censor baiting here. So you've got, because obviously the hero of the piece who ends up on the island, and he wants these two to mate to see what the offspring would be. So you've got bestiality in there, and obviously a lot of vivisection, which was very edgy stuff even back in those days. And the makeup effects again. Bela Lugosi's in there playing the Slayer of the Law, and he's in an early Wolfman makeup. You don't see him too well, but I've got close-up pictures of him, and that makeup is brilliant. His piercing eyes, and it's just completely hirsute, straggly hair everywhere. And of course, the fabulously grotesque climax when all the beast men finally get their revenge on Dr. Moreau, and they drag him to the House of Pain, which was his experiment room, his laboratory where he conducted, and pain, he's like, pain is good and all this, like, I enjoy pain. He's a sadist. And they get him on the table. You don't see it, but you hear it. And they all get these wicked tools, and they're going to go to work on him. Oh, Jesus Christ. Awesome movie. What do we have after this? Oh, Carl Freund again. Carl Freund, who did The Mummy, he did a film called Mad Love with Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre plays Dr. Gogol, who's again a bit of a fucking sadist. And you've got, it's Colin Clive, who was Dr. Frankenstein in the first two movies. And he's a famous pianist, and his hands get wrecked in like a, I think Doctor Strange, his hands get wrecked in a train crash, and he gets grafted on the hands of a killer. You know where we're going with this, but you know, it's based on an original story called The Hands of Dr. Orlok, or Orlok, and it was later filmed as The Hands of Orlok. And but Gogol has the hots for Colin Clive's wife. I've forgotten who plays her, which is very attractive. And Peter Lorre is completely bald in this, and his ears are kind of sticky uppy, kind of like Vulcan-like, and those bulbous, froggy eyes of his, like, he's quite a ghastly sight. And there's some great scenes where he actually pretends to be the reincarnation of the murderer who's been guillotined, and he's got like a neck brace on, glasses on, and a hat, and his weird sort of metallic electronic hands to drive Colin Clive mad and to drive him towards murder. And of course, you know, the hands have this knack for throwing knives with unerring accuracy. So even when there's a happy ending, you still got to remember, he's still got the hands of a killer, which he can't really control. So how much more peace are they going to have in this marriage? Anyway, great film. Again, very atmospheric. You've got a... Carl Freund was a cameraman as well. And a lot of his films were just beautifully filmed and lensed. This is a bit more... It's a bit more static, but you've got expressionist lighting and you've got expressionist sets as well. So they're filmed from weird angles, but the camera doesn't move so much. Unlike in the Mummy itself, he demanded the camera flowed, and you do get tracking shots in a very vintage movie, and it's brilliant stuff. Anyway, I'm digressing yet again. Jesus, we've come to the last one. 1939, Son of Frankenstein by, oh God, what's his name? Roland V. Lee. Now, this is genuinely the third in the Universal Frankenstein classic series. And you've now got Basil Rathbone playing the son of Colin Clive, the original Frankenstein. And he's ended up at Frankenstein's castle, you know, and he wants to find the old laboratory, because the villagers are a bit like, hang on a minute, a Frankenstein back up on the mountain. What if he starts doing experiments like his old man did? He's assured us he won't do that. You've got the great Lionel Atwill, and this is where, you know, Lionel Atwill is a copper, a gendarme, and he's got a wooden arm because, yes, I remember the dark days of the monster. He broke into our house one night. He tore my arm out at the root. At the root. So he's got a wooden arm. And this, of course, is famously in Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. He is much parodied. You know, his arm just goes... He does like cigars, you know, with his hand. And he puts the darts in his wooden hand and they play darts. Famously mocked in Young Frankenstein, which is... Young Frankenstein, by the way, is one of the best gothic horror movies ever made, even though it's a comedy. It's told with so much passion, so much attention to detail, and it really does pay homage to all these classic movies. I will at some point cover that at length, because that is just genius. Genius. You know, no, it's pronounced Igor. And of course, Son of Frankenstein is the film that brings back Bela Lugosi to play Igor, who is the broke neck sort of criminal, the hermit that lives out in the mountains and becomes when they revive the monster, becomes the monster's friend. And because he'd been hung, but he survived it, and they can't hang you twice, you know, he wants revenge on the Burgermeisters and the people that sentenced him. So he uses the monster to go and exact his revenge. But again, it's Bela Lugosi, in one of his signature roles, infinitely better and better portrayed and more memorable in my mind than even Dracula. And Dracula was genius. He's got a big beard on him, and he's got a hunchback, and his neck's broken like that, and he goes like bang bang, and it's got this metallic noise because it's you can't kill me, bang bang. They tried, they can't kill old Igor. Film is fucking genius. It takes a while to get going, and it's got one of the world's worst child stars in it playing the Frankenstein son, Basil Rathbone's son. Oh God, he is terrible. And so bad, he will take you out of the movie whenever he's on screen. But you've got an action-packed climax as well. And you've got the image of Frankenstein's monster with the bearskin sort of jacket on, which became another famous look for him. Obviously, after this, Boris Karloff would not play the monster again. However, Bela Lugosi would play the monster in the very next movie, Ghost of Frankenstein. And then you get other people. I mean, even Lon Chaney Jr. played the monster as well. But the monster did less and less and less in each successive movie. And, they're enjoyable. But then they became the monster mashes, where you'd have, like, the Wolfman make an appearance. Dracula would be in there as well. And it was just a hodgepodge. They're great in their own way. But they're not a patch on the original movies, the standalone movies. Although, when I come onto the 40s, I will have a special mention for Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, because I do love that movie a lot. Folks, I think I've done 10 there. Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Werewolf of London, The Old Dark House, The Mummy, King Kong, Eye of the Lost Souls, Mad Love, Son of Frankenstein. Okay, folks, there is my top 10 horror movies from the 1930s. Now, there's a lot to pick over there. There's some absolute bona fide classics. Well, in fact, they are all classics. The weird thing is, they seem like classics now because they were innovative at the time. They were unusual. They broke new ground. Nowadays, if you made films similar to those, they would not be hailed as classics. And even if the acting seems stale, staid, wooden, theatrical, pantomimic, well, that was the era. A lot of these actors cut their teeth working on stage, so they found it very hard to suddenly act in front of a camera. And again, people who make the films like to get their cast in the same shot, like it would be on a stage. They often have like just one or two sets. The limitations of the genre were all apparent, but as I said with Carl Freund and with James Whale, these were innovators of cinematic technique. So you go back and watch these films again now, and they are still striking in their cinematography, their set design, their camera angles, their whole design, and of course the audacious storytelling. It's without all of these films were in their own in fact, they were all controversial, all of them. Some especially so, and it's because of the films on that list that the Hays Code was brought in, and the whole horror thing was banned, censored, and around the world, because these things were shockers, and but without them, we wouldn't have the genre that we know and love. Horror is where it's at. As Colonel Kurtz said in Apocalypse Now, the horror. Folks, cheers you all. Cheers, my boy. Watch out for lightning tonight. Apparently it's going to storm. And I'll have another film review for you very soon, in fact. And then I'll do another top 10, and it'll be from the 40s, then the 50s, then the 60s, then the 70s. That's good. I ain't gonna do that, really. You know what I mean? So many classics, so many genuine, audacious, controversial, taboo-breaking movies came out in the 70s. And then you got the schlocky 80s. Oh, yes. Great fun. I might even do fucking top 20s. I can't just do 10. Folks, from me and the big fella, have a good one. Don't worry, vampires and werewolves do exist. You're looking at one. And I'm going to see you all. It's alive! Alive!